Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm a clinical social worker and a yoga therapist. And this video, I want to just talk a little bit about how to differentiate when there's things that we need to work on individually, and then when there's maybe things that our body, our experience is pointing us to some type of injustice, some type of misuse of power that actually is calling us to act. Because I think sometimes, especially people who really care, who want to make a difference, who are doing personal work, can feel like we have to do all of the work, and then we just stay in situations, or we get stuck in situations where we take on much more responsibility for doing the emotional labor, the emotional processing, than the people who are actually causing harm. And what we need to do is to push back on the people causing harm, to do what we can within our power to stop that harm from happening to ourselves, to other people, in the larger community, in the larger world. So there's kind of, within the world of personal work, personal development work, spiritual practices, we want to be able to build our capacity to sit with discomfort. So we want to be able to build our capacity to feel, to witness the pain and suffering within ourselves, within other people. And that is a really important capacity that we want to build as any human beings, because we all have pain, we all have suffering that is inherently part of being human. So when we're thinking about doing work on ourselves, what we're really trying to do is, how do we navigate being human more skillfully? And that requires us to be able to identify when there's discomfort. Maybe that discomfort in the past might have led us to avoid, or it's leading us to avoid something, if that's something within ourselves in terms of feeling, if it's having that conversation, if it's telling someone what you really feel, whatever that might be. The work there is to actually learn how to be with discomfort and embrace discomfort without shutting down, avoiding, scrolling, drinking, whatever it might be. That work is really important to build capacity to be with discomfort within ourselves. I think where it gets tricky, and there's not always a clear line, is sometimes what we're reacting to is a misuse of power or injustice in the world. And that discomfort is not something we need to just sit with. So when we're in an organization or an institution and we see someone with power who is mistreating people, who is impacting people below them, because they are doing things, maybe consciously or unconsciously, that are negatively reinforcing power dynamics and causing harm, that is not discomfort we want to just sit with. And I think that is true in, from relationships. It could be our personal relationships where our boundaries might be being crossed. The work there isn't just to say, I need to learn how to just get more comfortable with this thing that is uncomfortable. The work there is actually to be able to set boundaries with other people. But sometimes we kind of just lean into this, like, it's all on me just to do the emotional work, when we actually need to be addressing what's happening outside of us, because that impacts how we're feeling within our body. And then it kind of goes out. So we're also thinking in terms of communities, in terms of jobs, in terms of larger social structures where there's oppressive forces that are happening. Yes, we have to be able to build our capacity to manage it and to be able to be present with it, but that doesn't mean we don't do anything about it. So I think we get in this bucket of, either it is we're doing the personal work. If you go into spiritual circles, that is what is needed to change the world. You go into activism circles and it's action, action, action. And I think both are so, so important, but they have to be linked together. And we have to be really discerning about when we're using what tools. So if there's something that is more of a personal issue where we're really uncomfortable with a certain feeling someone else is having, or we're uncomfortable with a situation that maybe is more of a personal trigger for us, and then we're trying to act and change and do that work outside of ourselves, we're actually causing ourselves a disservice, because what we need to do in that moment is sit with our emotions, process what might be coming up for us in order to get rid of the stuck emotions and energy in our system that are being triggered from past events. And in the same way, when we are pushing in the outside world and taking no time to reflect and look at ourselves, we might be acting in really harmful ways to ourselves. We might be disregarding our own needs. We might be disregarding what our body is telling us, running ourselves ragged. Or we might be harming other people because we're showing up to things and we are exhausted and overwhelmed and snappy and irritable. And that also isn't leading to the outcome we really want, which is to have positive change in a world where people are able to get their needs met. So I think it's like important that we look at both in terms of why we're doing what we're doing. So personal work, I really deeply believe, is not just for me as an individual. It is so I can show up in the world in a different way, have the internal resources to continue to do the work to create positive change in the world. Personal work to just feel better actually is really an appropriation of a lot of the practices, a lot of the wisdom in the world that is based deeply in interconnection. That if I'm being harmed, if someone else is being harmed, we're all being harmed. So just to say I'm going to transcend this experience, I'm going to sit and meditate all day, that's not actually living these deeper wisdoms and practices. What it requires of us is to do the hard things, to push back against injustice, and to resource ourselves so we can do that effectively and for the long run. I hope that this was helpful in thinking more about being able to differentiate what we need to do at any given time. And obviously it's much more complicated than a clear line every time. But I think the more and more we're able to tune into ourselves, understand the signals we're getting, be able to differentiate, is this my stuff? Or am I reacting to bad behavior and misuse of power and injustice? And our body is going to give us clear signals. We just have to learn how to listen. Then we can really make a difference in how we're moving through the world skillfully, so we're not burning out. So we have what we need, and we're also being really effective in making positive change in the world.